So, given where you're at in this process of experiencing the truth, what are you dealing with when it comes to experiencing the truth? When I do psychotherapy with people these days, I invite them to share where they're at and what they're dealing with. And when they do that, it's inevitably a situation in which they start speaking from the person. They start speaking from their view of being a person. And so psychotherapy, in terms of the approach that I'm using, is not to help the person, not to help the person figure out better strategies or change the way they think or get relief from anxiety or depression. It's more like coaching, you know? What does a coach do with a player in a sports game? When the player's practicing, the coach keeps pointing out corrections, right? Keeps pointing out corrections. They even take videos of people, you know, when they're batting in baseball, and then look at the video and slow it down, you know, and compare the way the person's swinging the bat to what the physics tell us could be the perfect bat swing, like that. So in this process, what does it take in order for you to be able to be involved in a process in which you're gradually coming out of the illusion, gradually coming out of this idea that you're the body and the person? What does it take? Because that's what you're dealing with. You know, when you practice meditation, we're practicing allowing yourself to experience your being. We're practicing allowing yourself to experience your being, and we do that by intentionally moving attention away from thinking. And even though the attention won't be away very long from thinking, the possibility that it can be away from thinking gets discovered, that you're still here without thought gets discovered. Then the question is, well, what is it that's here without thought? Because without thought, how do you know what's happening? Because for the most part, people know what's happening because they think about it, right? You know, without attention, the game's over. Without attention, there's no possibility. What is attention? What is attention? What does that mean? It means that you can focus, right? You can focus on something and you can look at what you're focusing on. And when you look at what you're focusing on, you can see that as distinct from everything else, right? So you can really get a clear close-up and be able to see things that you might not see if you were looking at the whole screen all the time, like that. So then how does attention work in terms of, because one of the things that is the case here is that we start out with the idea that meditation is a practice. You know, and we talk about the fact that when you're practicing meditation, you can begin to see things differently. You can begin to experience the natural state, your true nature. But in the formal practice of meditation, once that's over, and you then just go back into your life, into your regular way of being in your life, right? If there is no carryover and there is no application in your ordinary life, then meditation is a waste of time. It's not going to really do anything, because even if it helps you to relax and reduce your stress, well, there's nothing wrong with that. But once you get back into your regular way of being, the stress is going to come back pretty quickly. It's interesting because when you really look at attention, what you can see when you really look at attention and really pay attention to attention, you can start to see that during your ordinary life, your attention is not yours. Because when you're in the form of a personality, what's capturing your attention? What's important to the personality?
Pleasurable things.
That's certainly one of the things that's important to the personality. And why is that so important? Pleasure is an important thing to the personality. Why is that important?
This makes us feel we think we're feeling happy, feel good, but it's also the opposite of distress or pain.
Right. Yeah. So they're the two realities that the personality is involved in all the time. Getting more of what it wants and less of what it doesn't want. More pleasure, less pain, right? So when discomfort occurs, which is inevitable when you're dealing with life, right? Because in the game we're playing in life, we're all separate from one another. We're living in time and space, and we don't have control over this. Circumstances are going to happen the way they do. We can't control it. We can't even change it. And so then in that situation, what's the practice? See, that's the thing. We start out with the idea that we're going to practice meditation, and we understand the importance of practicing meditation is to have more consistency in being aware as what we are. But is the practice of meditation alone, is the formal practice of meditation alone sufficient for that to happen? No, it's not. As a matter of fact, one of the things that happens, even if you're a committed meditator, one of the things that happens is you begin to experience more and more frustration about the fact that the formal meditation is not significantly changing the way your life is occurring to you. It's not significantly changing the experience of being alive for you. And that creates frustration. And that's the reason why a lot of people who practice formal meditation give up on formal meditation, because it's not delivering the goods, right? Well, now we have deeper understandings than that come from some of the higher teachings, right? And some of the higher teachings tell us that formal meditation is the practice of meditation in order to cultivate your ability to meditate, not with the understanding that that practice in and of itself is going to change everything, but it's going to cultivate your ability to meditate. And what is the most important aspect of the practice of meditation without which meditation wouldn't work at all?
The breath.
No?
Staying in the present moment,
How do you do that?
just observing thoughts, but not getting involved with them.
But how do you observe it? What would allow you to observe thoughts?
Practice your attention.
Yeah, paying attention, right? If you're not able to pay attention, there's nothing to observe. Your attention is just going to be scattered all over the place, right? And the personality's attention is taken all day long. The personality is living under the delusion that they're in control of their attention. But people who create advertising know that that's not true. That's how they sell, right? Because they know you're not in control of your attention. So what do? They present you with things that they know your attention will be taken by. Okay? So what takes your attention? Pleasurable things, right? Pleasurable things. What takes your attention? Something that will allow you to avoid being uncomfortable takes your attention. Or your programming, the way your programming takes your attention. If you're a man, attractive women takes your attention. If you're a woman, attractive men takes your attention. You've been programmed for that to happen, so you have sex and make babies. So that's your programming, right? So as you go through your everyday life, how often do you pay attention to your attention? How often do you pay attention to what's taking your attention all day long?
Problem.
Yeah. So it takes attention to be aware of attention, right? And it takes attention to be able to have your intention to pay attention be something that you're cultivating. Your intention to pay attention. Why is this important? Because if it's possible for us to be awake instead of asleep, if it's possible for us to know who we are instead of continue to take who we are to be something that doesn't exist, like the personality. If that's possible, that possibility is based on the idea that you're able to pay attention, because paying attention is a function of being awake. So being awake means that all day long you're aware of what's going on in your mind. That's the place that the attention needs to be paid if you want to cultivate your ability and stabilize your ability to be awake and aware. That's what you have to be looking at all the time. Why? Because the mind's generating the illusion that you're something that you're not. The mind's generating the illusion that you're something that you're not, and the mind is allowing you to participate in the activity of that which you're not. The activity of that which you're not is called thinking, right? The personality's doing the thinking all the time. This is the grand illusion that the personality's doing the thinking. Even though if you pay attention to the thought activity, it's pretty obvious, it's pretty revealing, and it's pretty obvious that you're not doing the thinking is just happening. And if you come to that understanding, if you recognize the thinking is just happening and you're not the cause of it, that changes everything, right? That changes everything, because then when you start to pay attention, you can start realizing the thinking that's occurring there is the thinking that would be thought by a personality that takes itself to be separate from the rest of the world and other people. That's how the thinking works. I'm thinking about what? Me. I'm thinking about me. Whenever I'm thinking about you, I'm thinking about me first in relationship to you. Whenever I think about what's happening in the world, I'm thinking about what's happening in relationship to me, how it's going to affect me, how it's going to impact me, right? So this is unwitting. In other words, you don't realize it when you're in this state, this mental condition in which you're involved in the mental activity, and you mistake the mental activity for reality. You mistake the mental activity, you mistake your thoughts about the world for the world. You mistake your opinions about other people for the truth, right? And then you live your life within that domain. You live your life within that system, right? And obviously it doesn't work. All you have to do is look at the evidence. Evidence is clear all around us. Human beings can't get along with one another. Human beings understand something like, love your neighbor as thyself. They understand that, right? But they can't practice it. And the reason they can't practice it is because the neighbor that we're talking about loving as yourself is taken to not be yourself, right? Once you take it not to be yourself, then you can't love your neighbor as yourself because it's not yourself, right? And you don't know what to expect. You don't know what to expect from your neighbor. And you can predict the fact that your neighbor is going to operate on their conditioning like you're operating on your conditioning, which means they're surviving and you're surviving. And whenever what you do threatens them, you'll behave as if they're the problem. Whenever what you do, so it's a threat, it's a transactional thing. You threaten me, I'll threaten you. Right? If I feel unsafe around you, then I have to protect myself. How do I protect myself? By making you wrong and by being right. That's how I protect myself. And then I defend my position. I defend my point of view, right? Because you're threatening my point of view. If you threaten my point of view, you're threatening me, right? Because I am my point of view. I identify with it. You see? So the only way to experience peace of mind and the only way to experience happiness and satisfaction is to get out of that system, to get out of the system. And you can't get out of it using the same method that you got into it. You got into it through thinking. This is why conventional psychotherapy doesn't work, because it's based on the idea that talk therapy is going to be that I'm going to listen to you tell me what you think, isn't it? That's what talk therapy is. I'm going to listen to you tell me what you think, and if I'm listening to you tell me what you think, and I'm going to get involved with your thought activity and help you reorganize it, change it, modify it, right? So that you're changing your thinking, right? But it won't hold up very long, even if you're successful in doing it for a limited period of time, right? Because the true source of the problem was never dealt with. Because the true source of the problem is not the thoughts, right? The true source of the problem is that you take yourself to be the thinker of the thoughts. That's the source. So the thing that's important to understand, right, is that it's an identity crisis. You're in an identity crisis. If you understand the truth, you're in an identity crisis, because if you understand the truth, it means that you're living your life as something that you're not, and that something that you're not, right, is more interested in survival than being happy, peaceful, and satisfied. It will trade those off immediately for survival.
Lizard brain, we can't control that. Did you know that?
You don't have to control it. That's the thing. This is not about controlling it.
It's always gonna be our automatic programming from, years and years of evolution.
Instinct.
That's right. It's going to play on its own. It's an automatic reality. Your brain has been hypnotized. Your brain has been programmed, right? And so the programs will just play. They'll just play, right? And the thing about it is that you're suffering from your own brain. You're suffering from your own programming playing, because when it plays, it doesn't work. And you're disappointed, you're anxious, you're depressed, you're angry, right? Because it's not working. And the way that program is organized, right, is that if it's not working, it's because of something out here needs to be different than it is, isn't it? If it's not working in a marriage, it's that the other person has to change, right? If it's not working in the world, then the world is wrong. The way things are in the world is wrong, and so I'm going to resist it, I'm going to reject it. Yeah? And if I take that to its logical conclusion, I don't leave my house.
The world is kind of screwed up right now.
Of course it's screwed up, because the world is a manifestation of a lie. The world is a manifestation of 8 billion people that are living in a dream that they think is reality. 8 billion people that are living in a dream in which they are all separate from one another. Time is real, space is real, and we're all going to die. And that's the game we're playing here, you know. How do you win that game, right? The only way you can win that game is to get as many toys as you can, so you can be happy and distract yourself from the inevitable reality, which is you're going to die. Right? If you really break it down, that's what's happening. That's what everybody's doing, right? It's interesting. What's that guy's name? I can never remember names. The author of the book?
Harari?
Yeah. How do you pronounce it?
Harari.
Harari?
Yeah, Harari.
Yeah.
You
It-
well know of her.
One of the things that I like about him is that he makes a distinction between truth and power. You notice that? That's what he's talking about, truth and power. And he's saying the condition that we are in as human beings, we are more committed to power and being in control than we are what's true. And that's our demise right there. As long as you're committed to power, it means that you're going to try and get as much power as you can in this world, right? And how do you do that?
More money.
More money. And that's the general operational procedure for humanity, is they'd rather be in control. Yeah, and this is very, very important, right? Because if you're going to get into the more sophisticated and deeper areas of wisdom, that's what you're going to get into, right? And not only do you have limited control, you have no control. It appears that there are some things that we can change, right? And then we make the conclusion that we're in control and we are a doer. We have doership. We believe in doership. We believe that we can do things and make changes, right? And therefore, what are humans do? What are human beings doing all the time? Changing, aren't they? Getting a new car, getting a new house, getting a new relationship, buying new makeup, buying new clothes, right? Getting all these, keep changing things, keep changing. If it's not working, I'll change it. If it's not working, I'll change it. But what do they say? The more things change, the more they stay the same. Because the one thing that's not changing is your identity with what you're not. As long as that stays the same, all the changing won't make any difference, because the source of the problem hasn't changed. It's an identity crisis. If you really want to look at what the solution to suffering is, right, it's a relatively simple solution, right? Start paying attention to the mental activity that has you take yourself to be something that you're not. And by paying attention to that mental activity that has you take yourself to be something that you're not, you can stop following it. You can stop following it and have your attention be on what's happening from a real place called awareness, from something that's actual called awareness, instead of a thought process that's producing an illusion that you're something that doesn't actually exist.
So when you're paying attention, you're just knowing the thoughts for thoughts.
Yeah. That the 8 verses training mind is powerful stuff, right?
Keep yourself humble before everyone,
That's right.
which
And-
isn't the easiest thing.
It's the hardest possible thing you could do, because the only way you could practice the 8 verses of training the mind, right, is to insult your own personality, right? That's what you're doing when you're practicing the 8 verses of training the mind, right? Especially in a situation where there's a lot at stake, right? To give the other person the victory, that'll really occur to you, given your programming, that'll really occur to be nonsense. That'll really occur to be wrong. That's just wrong. Most people, if you read, I know it was true for me, the first time you read the 8 verses of training the mind, if you listen to your mind talk while you're reading it, your mind's saying, oh no, I can't follow that. I can't do that. I can't just give up my point of view every time there's conflict. That doesn't make any sense. How could I do that? It's impossible for me to do that. As a personality, it is. Yeah? But if you give up your personality, if you give up your point of view, if you give up your investment in your conditioning and your programming, right, especially in regard to a very significant issue, you'll experience a tremendous relief. Tremendous relief. Right? But in order to get to that relief, you have to tolerate the discomfort that you experience because your mind goes crazy because it feels like you're giving up, you're giving up the whole house. Right? You can stay in love with somebody that you're married to and get a divorce. In fact, you might get a divorce because you love them. Right? But that doesn't seem available to people, right? So when we're talking about giving up your point of view, for the most part, the things that you take a stand for and get into conflict for are not that big of a deal, are they? It's usually petty shit. If it's that big of a deal, then there's some larger issue that has to be dealt with in terms of what are you doing here in the first place? You know what I mean? The one thing that people don't realize when their marriages aren't working, right, in terms of who's responsible for the situation, right? It's very easy to point the finger to the other person, but you're the one that married him. How about that? How responsible are you for having made that commitment, right? And if you made that commitment to marry them, then you have to take responsibility for what's down the road. You know, don't make that commitment and then down the road, as soon as things happen that you don't like, say, oh no, I didn't agree to this. Oh yes, you did. Oh yes, you did. Because when you were in front of the priest or the mayor or whoever you got married, right? If you look at the vows for marriage, they don't say, oh, we'll stay together unless something comes up that we disagree about. That's not what the vows say. They say no matter what, you'll stay together, which means that you'll deal with each other's minds, you'll deal with each other's emotions, you'll deal with the circumstances you both have to deal with in life, and you'll do it together and you'll sort it out somehow. When the shit hits the fan and you really feel like the marriage is in the toilet, right? That possibility sounds like bullshit. And then you'll meet somebody and get in front of a judge and do it again.